Review, the show that talks about Colorado sports with a sprinkling of national sports stories as well. I'm Jordan Long. The Denver Broncos lost to Kansas City last night, 19-8. Their record now sits at 1 win and 5 losses. Last week, Denver traded Randy Gregory for his lack of production, while another high-priced free agent has left as well. The Broncos released pass rusher Frank Clark. The Broncos thought Clark was the answer to help Denver's pass rush, and it's easy to see why. He played for Seattle from 2015 to 2018. In his time with Seattle, he had 35 sacks, 136 tackles, and 72 quarterback hits. Clark was then traded to Kansas City, where he helped them win 2 Super Bowls. In his 4 years with Kansas City, he was one of their best pass rushers. He had 23.5 sacks, 127 tackles, and 59 quarterback hits. Kansas City let Clark go, and Denver signed him to a 1-year, $7.5 million contract, and it made a lot of sense at the time. Clark was going to be part of their pass rush, which was going to be the strength of this defense. Well, Clark hasn't seen the field, and he's played in 2 games this season, and I forgot he was even on the roster. It didn't even feel like he played 2 games because I never heard his name announced. In total, he had 2 tackles. Denver earlier this week was trying to trade Clark. They agreed to a reduced salary, and remember, he signed a 1-year, $7.5 million contract. The Broncos reduced that to $1.77 million. Now, it felt like a good number for the Broncos to trade him. Well, the trade deadline is October 31st, so there was plenty of time to find a trade partner. Well, Denver decided it was best to move on from Clark, releasing him, and it's just another bad contract on defense. The guy almost never saw the field, and this was another move by George Paton that didn't work out. Now, George Paton has made plenty of terrible personnel moves. If you look last week, the Broncos traded Randy Gregory to the 49ers for a 6th-round draft pick. Then again, that has to do with general manager George Paton. So many moves haven't worked out. Last week, cutting ties with Gregory by trading him, but at least you got something back. This week, you released Clark. The Broncos ownership group needs to understand that George Paton is a problem with this team and the reason why the franchise isn't moving forward, but we're taking steps backward. We want to be a competitive franchise, and we're not doing so. Paton's moves haven't worked out. Besides Clark and Gregory, he executed the trade for Russell Wilson, which happened on March 16th, 2022. It was Wilson and a 4th-round draft pick to Denver, and Denver sent, this is what the Broncos sent to Seattle, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a 5th-round draft pick, quarterback Drew Lock, defensive lineman Shelby Harris, and tight end Noah Fant. Now, I don't remember exactly who the Seattle Seahawks drafted, but if you're looking at the draft picks, that is a lot for Russell Wilson. If you're looking at the 2 first-round and 2 second-round draft picks, that is essentially for starters. Paton, though, saw enough of Russell Wilson that even before the season started, Paton gave him a massive 5-year, $245 million contract because of the fact we thought this would be the franchise quarterback. It made no sense to pay Wilson that money since he hadn't played it down. Well, that didn't matter to George Paton. I understand his lack of production, that is Russell Wilson, isn't Wilson's fault. All these stats include this year. In his time with Denver, the Broncos are disappointing 5 wins and 16 losses. Wilson has passed for 4,829 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. He has been sacked 74 times, but that doesn't count the amount of times he was pressured and hit. Paton hasn't fixed the biggest problem with Denver's offense, the offensive line. It just seems like the Broncos' offensive line is beat right off the bat, and Wilson is running for his life. Paton has also fired 2 coaches, Vic Fangio and Nathaniel Hackett. Fangio wasn't his guy, and he was fired on January 19th, 2022. That was just after George Paton took the job. So on January 19th, 2022, He said, "See you later, fake Fangio." Peyton hired Nathaniel Hackett hoping it would work out, but it didn't work out as he was let go 15 games into last year. Now they have Sean Payton. Too many bad moves, and it's time to let Payton go, but his seat is only getting hotter. We're going to move on to the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago Cubs were in great position when September started. They stood at 72 wins and 63 losses, the second wildcard team. It looked like October baseball would be back for the Chicago Cubs. They ended the year pretty well at 83 wins and 79 losses, one game behind Arizona for the final wildcard spot in the National League. The thing is, though, Arizona is in the playoffs and is in the National League Championship Series, while the Cubs are at home watching. In September, though, and this is what cost the Cubs a playoff spot, they went a disappointing 11 wins and 16 losses. Of those 16 losses, 11 were 2 runs or less, including 4 extra inning losses. If you win some of those games, you are in the postseason. Instead, the Cubs missed the playoffs for the 3rd straight year. Chicago, though, and I don't understand, is bringing back manager David Ross. Ross has been the manager of the Cubs since 2020. Of course, that was the COVID-shortened year. The Cubs have gone 262 and 284 with him as manager. That's 262 wins and 284 losses with Ross as their manager. They have only earned a playoff spot once, and that was the COVID-shortened year, which was the best 2 out of 3 in the wild card series, but they lost to Miami. In fact, they were swept and only scored one run. Miami outscored them 7-1. Of course, Chicago thought, hey, we made the playoffs last year in the COVID-shortened year. It would be things to come. Well, it didn't, and it hasn't worked out. 2021, 71 wins, missing the playoffs. Last year, 74 wins, missing the playoffs. This year was his best at 83, but it still wasn't enough to get the Cubs to the playoffs. Even though that it was, a great year, the Cubs did make decisions on their staff, and they decided to move on from game strategy coach Greg Driver and bullpen coach Chris Young. I am not sure what a game strategy coach does, but whatever it was didn't work out on the final stretch of the year. As for the bullpen coach, Chris Young, it doesn't make sense to let him go. The Cubs bullpen was pretty good, as they were 13th in ERA with an ERA of 3.85. For him to be let go makes no sense. Rush has shown at times the inability to make a move. The team ERA was 4.08, 14th in baseball. You're looking at the bullpen ERA or the relievers with an ERA of 3.85. Your team ERA was 4.08, 14th in baseball, and the starters was 4.26, 16th in baseball. That is on Ross. He waited too long to go to the bullpen. By the time he switched pitchers, the Cubs were either tied or behind. It made it difficult for the relievers. The Cubs are looking for a scapegoat for the poor ending to the season. Young, that is Chris Young, who is the bullpen coach, is the scapegoat. Ross is the problem with this franchise. President of baseball operations, I should say. So president of baseball operations, Jed Hoyer, is not ready to admit that yet. The Cubs will look at fixing their bullpen during the offseason. The Cubs, though, can look forward to being a competitive team next season. They should do that next year, as they made some step forwards this year. For manager David Ross, he has one more year left on his contract, and that's next year. And then really it's a 2025 team option, but then that is only if he manages this team really well. So really 1 year left. Next year, maybe his last in Chicago managing the team. Then again, if they earn a playoff spot or be competitive, it may save his job for 1 more year. Time for my NFL picks of the week. So last week, wasn't my strongest week as I went 2-3. We will start with the Indianapolis Colts versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Colts are a 4-point favorite. Even though the Colts are the favorite, I'm going with Jacksonville. I just think they are the better team. The Lions versus the Buccaneers. The Lions are a 3-point favorite, and they win the game. I just think they're the better team, so they will get it done. The New Orleans Saints versus the Houston Texans. This is almost a pick-em game because the Saints are a 1.5-point favorite. I love what C.J. Stroud is doing in Houston. They get the win as I'm going with Houston. The 49ers versus the Cleveland Browns. The 49ers are a 10-point favorite. This isn't going to be much of a game as it's going to be too much of the 49ers as they get the victory. The Dallas Cowboys versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Dallas is a 2-point favorite. I understand Dallas looked horrible last week, but they get it right as they beat the Chargers in a close game. My picks again, Colts versus Jaguars. I'm going with the Indianapolis Colts. Or I should say the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll try that again. Here are my picks again. The Indianapolis Colts versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars. Lions versus Buccaneers. Lions. Saints versus Houston. I'm going with the Houston Texans. 49ers versus Browns. 49ers. Cowboys versus Chargers. I'm going with the Cowboys. My picks again. Indianapolis versus Jacksonville. Jacksonville. Lions versus Buccaneers. The Detroit Lions. The New Orleans Saints versus the Houston Texans. Houston. The San Francisco 49ers versus Cleveland. San Francisco. Dallas Cowboys versus the Chargers. The Dallas Cowboys. I'm Jordan Long. Follow me on Twitter at SportsScoop1. Read my blog that I write Mondays through Thursdays at sports-scoop.com. Thank you for watching Under Review. Have a great day and week, and I will catch you next time here on